toward. And so that brings me back to education. So how do we educate college students and really re-educate college students about a lot of these important things about how the government works, about their history? I think one is having a presence on college campuses. I think whether that be through convention of states or through local organizations that you have, having a presence on your college campus can make a huge difference, because it's not the college students that are resistant to the truth, it's just that they're not exposed to the truth. And so I think when you're putting that information out to college students, though, it has to be really digestible, and it can't be super aggressive either. And so it needs to be things that, I think it's just something with our generation, there's just a short attention span to things. And so if you can't capture their attention instantly and draw them in, you're not going to have a lot of luck in re-educating them about a lot of these topics. And so you're not going to be able to have a 1-hour philosophical discussion with them about some of these things. And so you got to get them truth in bite-sized pieces. And I think the best way to do that is in person on the campuses. However, I think there's some other ways to do that as well. One, I think, is re-engaging in the churches. There's a lot of college students who are there, and it's really important to a lot of students as well, their faith. And so if we're not engaging in that and putting the practical application of how that affects culture into it, then we're losing a whole demographic of people that are not.
I'm just going to say, this is a youth leaders kind of Republican club, but by Republican, I mean they're about the Republic and the Article 5 Convention of States. The interesting thing about this group is that they're basing everything on Judeo-Christian ethics instead of just getting down to the brass tacks. So this is like an induction for youth to first accept Christian, Protestant biblical tenets as a groundwork in order to properly indoctrinate them into properly aligning with the United States as an institution, instead of just getting to the brass tacks of the process and the legal things that conventions of states does. That being said, back to them. They'll comment later.
But what I would encourage people the most is, one, in your day-to-day life, when you're coming in contact with young people, having those conversations with them about the truth, as it's appropriate. And then I would say, if you have a college campus near you, I would get engaged on there immediately. Find the clubs that are on those campuses. Most campuses already have the club that exists on there, but they need people that are passionate about it to help them be effective on the college campus. And so I think a lot of clubs that are on these campuses would love to have someone who's knowledgeable about these things help them engage their fellow students around them. So it's a complicated answer, I know, but it's a complicated problem. And I think ultimately it just comes down to re-educating our generation about all the lies that they hear.
Absolutely. And I think to sum it up, we have to go to where the young people are and not be afraid to engage and challenge what they're being taught in the school systems. Because, as you pointed out, there's a lot of misinformation that's being taught, and we need to take the time to actually teach them, and perhaps take advantage of things like Constitution Week or Article 5 Day to use that to kind of teach people about those things. I mean, there was no real discussion about Constitution Week when I was growing up and I was going to school. I had no idea about Article 5 Day or anything like that. And that's an opportunity for us with Convention of States to go in there and start to educate people. And again, folks, I'll say, if you want to be a part of that, please go to conventionofstates.com, click on the Take Action tab, sign up to become a volunteer. Our teams are actually doing this. We're actually out there and trying to engage with many of these schools to bring about that type of education, and obviously programs.
Okay, I'm going to say, so far it sounds like a civics thing and an education thing, just to get people up to date on the functionality of the Republic and the laws that we currently have on the federal books. Even though obviously some of the things that they're doing fall short. As if I was executor of the country, I would of course exercise an amendment to keep and use Article 5 in order to get the population on board. in order to remove dark money out of political campaigns, which seems to be something that independents don't have. Only the Democrats mainly do, and the Republicans somewhat do. That being said, back to this youth Judeo-Christian indoctrination relative to the grassroots. And I'm not Christian. I'm just saying they're getting right into the biblical thing instead of the pragmatics of the process.
And I think that for me, going back to where I started in high school, I was looking for some place to get involved. And for me, that place was Patriot Academy. And I love that. But I think there are lots of other young people who are also in a similar place and they want to get involved in an organization. And I think there's just so many opportunities there that we can provide, even through Convention of States and those local grassroots teams, because young people were always looking to volunteer, to get involved in something, a mission that we believe in, that we want to learn from, something bigger than ourselves. And I think Convention of States offers really great opportunities to do that at the grassroots level. So I think young people can definitely be volunteer activists, come to events, even though, there's school, there's lots of other commitments that young people have. I think it's a great way to get involved in local politics and what's actually going on right in your backyard. So I think becoming a volunteer activist and getting to know your state team and work with them is a great start. But then, as Jackson was saying, social media is a big part of our world and a big part of how we convey information. It is the public square of our day. And so being a social media warrior and being trained in how to communicate the message of Convention of States there, I think is great. And then as people who have more time and who love Convention of States and our mission and are passionate about it and they want to continue, I don't see any reason why they can't continue with their volunteering and become a district captain, actually start influencing their communities in real tangible ways, because that's really where all the work is done. That's where the change happens. It happens one person at a time, one neighborhood at a time, and one day at a time. And I think there are just so many opportunities for young people to take advantage of there. And that's definitely something we would be missing out on if we didn't take advantage of that.
There it is, folks. So again, Convention of States, we have an opportunity here to reach out to young people in a number of different ways and get them engaged, and we absolutely need to do that. We're running a little short on time, but I did want to give each of you an opportunity to share any final thoughts. Jackson, we'll start with you. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I want to add just one thing to what I was saying earlier. One, if there's young people listening out there right now and you're on a college campus, just a couple pieces of advice for you. One, Dennis Prager's talked a lot about this, and I encourage you to go look it up and listen to a little bit more in depth on what he says about how to engage on your campuses. But when you're in classes and there's professors that are speaking about a bunch of lies and misinformation, I would encourage you to speak up about it. I know it's a tough thing to do, but you got to do it really respectfully. And I say the best way to do it is to ask questions that kind of challenge their point and challenge their logic, but you do it in a really respectful way and make them answer the question, make them defend what they're saying. Because if they just go unchecked, then you end up with a classroom full of people that just accept what they said as truth. And just because they have a PhD in something doesn't mean that they're right about something. And so challenge them, look it up, find the facts, and question them about it. And then for all the grassroots activists that are listening and you're going to go out there and, engage on these campuses, I would just, as all grassroots activism is, like, you're the front-facing face of this movement, of this organization. And so especially on a college campus, I'd say you got to be super respectful, super polite about it. You're not going to convince people by, just telling them that they're wrong and yelling at them. And I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen here at my, small campus in North Carolina. And that's not effective. It doesn't work. It really is a conversation that has to be had and a discussion that has to be had with people. And so I would just encourage people to do that. I do encourage you to get involved, but I also encourage you to go about it in a way that is really respectful and is more coming from a place of education instead of telling people they're wrong, especially on college campuses, because most people don't know. They're either misinformed or they're ignorant. They haven't really taken time to form an opinion. So you have really impressionable minds there that I think in most cases are going to be really open to a new point of view.
Reagan, any final thoughts?
Yeah, just to add on to what Jackson was saying, the reason that most college students are misinformed is because you're just not going to find a college that is going to inform you on the truth nowadays. And so it's very unfortunate. I don't know if you guys saw Matt Walsh's movie, What is a Woman? He's interviewing people with PhDs and they can't even answer the question, what is a woman? So don't trust someone just because they have PhD before their name. But go to Patriot Academy and educate yourself with the courses that we provide there: Biblical Citizenship, Modern America, and Constitution Alive. Our only agenda is truth, and so we're going to present to you the facts of reality and how God designed the society to work. So you have to take your education into your own hands. You cannot rely on your college to teach you about the reality of America's history, the good, the bad, and the ugly. We want to tell the whole story. We don't just want to highlight parts of our history, but we want to learn from all of it. So educate yourself if you're a college student and you're listening to this.
We need that foundation of education. Kristen, final thoughts?
Yes, one final thing. I would just encourage all college students out there, and I myself am a college student, so I am exactly where you are. I know that it is very hard to be on a college campus, and it's not going to be easy most of the time. And I would just encourage you to stand in the truth, live not by lies. And even though it will seem like you are alone some of the time, maybe even most of the time, I can guarantee that you're impacting at least one person around you. There have been times, and not every battle is one that you should fight. There are times when you should just wait it out. But the times when you do speak up, there have been numerous times when I've taken that risk, and I've had at least one person come to me privately and thank me and say that it impacted them and that it was inspirational to them. So you never know whose lives you're touching, who you're impacting, and just keep that in mind and just remain committed to the truth no matter how many lies are being spread out there.
Perfectly well said. I mean, thank you, all three of you, for being here this evening. There's been so much incredible stuff learned and talked about here, and I think a lot of people, when they look to future generations, they feel hopeless, and I think that's because they see what's in the culture and they just assume that the next generation is going to be worse than the one before. But it's young people like you that are really going to be the leaders for our future, and the future is bright if we have young leaders like all of you. So thank you all so much for taking the time to join us this evening. We do have a lot of questions from the audience. I want to take a few of those, even though we're running short on time. But one thing I want to add that I forgot to tease at the beginning is we have our next guest lined up for the next COS at Home webinar. And I want to share that with everyone right now. Now, I'll be honest with you folks, we're going to actually take a little bit of a break, okay? We've got a really amazing Convention of States Summit coming up at the beginning of October. And then we're going to take a few weeks because we're doing a lot of get out the vote efforts and trying to make some phone calls and impacting these elections. But right before the election starts, on Wednesday, November 2nd, we're going to have our next COS at Home webinar with none other than our great friend, Fox and Friends co-host, Pete Hegseth, will be joining us on Wednesday, November 2nd at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. Pete is a huge supporter of Convention of States. We've had him on COS at Home a couple of times, and it'll be awesome to have him back and giving us a preview of where things stand right before the election on November 8th. But he will be joining us Wednesday, November 2nd. So I hope you'll join us for that. We'll be dropping the link in the chat so you can click and register. Now, a couple of quick questions, and I will assign one of them to each of you. So Kristen, I'm going to give you this one because you had an opportunity to actually be in Tennessee. Twyla asked, Tennessee is already a past state, so what exactly can a Tennessean do to further this action?
Yeah, great question. I think that's the question that comes up in a lot of past states, and I have the privilege to work with a lot of those past states. And I think one of the main things that we think that the resolution is all that Convention of States does and all that we're about. But we like to say that we're more than a convention. And our goal, our overarching mission is really to build up that army of grassroots activists. And as you can see, we're trying to impact the culture. And so that means we always need more people, not only to sign the petition to support our resolution, but we need more people to be in the fight for self-governance and to be passionate about these ideas that we're trying to promulgate in our society, to be involved in our schools, to be involved in these communities. And so I think what those past states really need to do is, become involved in those communities. Reach out to other people who haven't heard about Convention of States and what we're trying to do. Reach out to your legislators and make sure that they continue to support the efforts that so many other patriots have worked on. Because just because you're a past state now doesn't mean that you will always be that way, because there's always going to be people who oppose the Convention of States, who oppose and are trying to undo what we've already done. And so we need to be vigilant, and we need to be strong and united in maintaining all the progress that we've made thus far. And then we need to get involved in whatever issues are important in your state. I don't live in Tennessee. I don't know what's important to people who live in Tennessee, but you live in Tennessee. And so that's really your responsibility, the responsibility of the people in your community, in your state.
Yeah, I'm just turning it down because now, once again, what's important to me in my state, and I call myself a Gnostic theist because I believe I'm an experiencer, quote unquote, which is weird to say I believe that I am as opposed to I know that I am. That being said, my reduction about something that is a process of law that is already in case, meaning it's already the case that the script, the Article 5 is in place. It doesn't matter whether or not you have a Judeo-Christian background. These guys are responding to the youth, to the future. And I have some affinity towards the LDS idealism that yields out of the process of their indoctrination process. That being said, these guys sound like Protestants relative to their Christendom, and they're trying to undergird the Convention of States as being dependent on Christendom. Now, I don't mind the stability that Judeo, like Jewish or Christian or even Muslim values attempt to bring to society. There's a grounded Abrahamic stability there, even though Muslims seem to be at odds. They're the most binarily discrete. They're not a Trinity-oriented theology, and maybe from tribe. My point being is that I would hate, and I do hate, or I dislike, and I would like, and I will engage with this particular group that's attempting to ground. I mean, I guess I don't mind them trying to get, future leaders and base them in a Christian Judaic notion. Is just that I disagree, if you don't mind, I disagree with the idea that to enact one's legal value system or the prescription that they have for the government and utilize Article 5, Convention of States, in order to do so, requires that one has an undergirding or a belief or an alignment with Protestant Christian values. And that might sound contrary to somebody that calls himself a Gnostic theist. It's just I'm not a theist in this manner. I'm not a Christian, but I don't know what it means specifically to agree with anyone else about what Christendom is. It's like an agreement set of rationalized reduction that falls well prior to Christ, at least by a few hundred years, and if not thousands of years. And but the idea is about the stability, having a stability. Now, my notion of the stability, in God we trust, fine. Even though some of these God terms were put on coinage or put in the Pledge of Allegiance, is a furthering to peg what otherwise the founding fathers would be a fairly bereft of religion, a deist, if you will, or an indifferent sort of God as an undergirding or a pegging or a grounding for where one, quote unquote, gets their rights. Nonetheless, whether it's pegged to God or it just exists in law, And one could argue whether or not every law needs a justified undergirding that's stable and the sort, and hence God, the appeal. That being said, the law itself already simply just allows us to change the law via these processes, regardless of whether or not you're a Christian, a Protestant Christian, a Mormon Christian, or a Judeo-Christian, or a Jew, or a damn atheist. Right? Anyway, point is I still believe in the Convention of States. I kind of don't like that this group is trying to necessitate its pegging to truth in biblical terms with the biblical ethic. Okay, back to these guys. I'm still enjoying it. I did join this. This just happens to be their ambassador program, and I think that they're fairly well spoken in their ardent approaches to things. I agree or disagree. Thanks for looking at my painting.
I'll get into those. Schools are very resistant to that, and we also have to have the foundation to be effective in doing that if we're going to invest in it. So that's a long-term vision that I think would be awesome, because I think that is a way to reach a ton of young people. Right now, I'd say, kind of going back to what I said earlier, I think partnering with the groups that already exist on the college campuses, whether that be Young Americans for Freedom, TPUSA, College Republicans. There's a lot of nonpartisan groups on campuses that are just looking for interesting ideas about politics or government or things like that to discuss, and we definitely fit that mold. And so I think finding those groups that already exist is the easiest way to do it. Partnering with them to come talk to their chapters about Convention of States. I've done that a few times where you go to a chapter meeting and you got 15 people there or something like that. Even if it's only 5 people, and you go and you talk to them about it. We have presentations that you can use, and you can pull so much information off our website to go and explain it to them. I think that's the best way to do it. You can use those groups as well to have tabling events on campus. And they have permission to do that through their charter that they have, and so then you can go with them if they allow you, and help them talk to students on their campus. I think that's the best way to do it. The quickest way is just utilizing the resources that are already there and gaining allies for Convention of States to do that. We've had success with that with TPUSA in the past and with College Republicans in the past as well, so it's definitely something that's possible.
Excellent. Thank you, the three of you. Really, really appreciate it. And folks, I know we're a little over time here, but there were 2 other questions that I wanted to answer very quickly. Nancy was admiring the amazing shirts that you have on, Jackson and Reagan. If you want to check out shirts like that and look as good as these young guys, go to shopconventionofstates.com. You can check out all of the Convention of States gear, including the shirt that I have on, the hat, the jacket over here. Check out our friends at shopconventionofstates.com, and that's where you can find some of that amazing gear. And I believe this gentleman's name is Eon, E-O-I-N, said, I'm a retired Marine and marketing professional. I'm 100% disabled, so I'm unable to get around. Could I bring anything to the table from my home? And the answer is absolutely 100% yes. You can definitely do that. We have an amazing program right now, an incredible tool with Convention of States called Telepatry. And this is an opportunity where you can engage simply by using your phone and contacting a number of people. We've got a lot of people that we're trying to connect with, both in our state to try and advance Convention of States, or in our communities to try and build a self-governing society. But we're also trying to get people out to the polls and get people out to vote, and also engage with some other states that haven't passed the resolution. So yes, if you are disabled or you're not able to get around, we do have a place for you. We have places for everyone. So again, I'd say go to conventionofstates.com, sign up to become a volunteer today by clicking on that Take Action tab, connect with your state team, and we will find a place for you. Folks, again, thank you so much for the time. Kristen, Jackson, and Reagan, you 3 are incredible. It is an honor and a blessing to work with all of you, and we are so grateful for everything that you're doing.
That being said, I concur with them almost entirely, or at least that last speaker, that look, the grassroots effort needs to occur. right? It needs to be an organic, advancing, grassroots effort. The Convention of States is the way the founding fathers put kind of not a linchpin, but an exceptional new check from the people just for this current bought out, lobbied, over lobbied, lockstep two-party system with dark money, basically illegal money, according to the FEC, being allowed to go within the two-party system. The Convention of States is how I think even a president should focus, right? And that would have been my beginning module, is to speak to the people wholeheartedly about the Convention of States, such as to get 38 states to put forth amendments onto Congress's bill, and then the people would see whether or not their representatives voted the way their constituency willed. And if they didn't, they could get them out. Currently, I even argued today with my old man that that our senators and our House reps, for the most part, for lobbying access, for probably what got them into office is already a dark money pledge that was back to them, but maybe not by necessity. But apparently it shows up when the powers that be believe that your political ideology aligns with their will, and or whether or not you're already so embedded into the system because you're so wealthy and you've got your fingers in so many pies that they just twist your fingers and threaten to destroy your pies, or that they just know that you're already aligned with their a global ideology that's to predominate over the masses. That being said, we're a Saturnilla country. We're a country currently at war, always at war. We fight on behest of the military-industrial complex. We're considered, in my mind, a Saturnilla, and even a demonic, not demonic, devilish, if you will, force around resource extraction and the toppling of governments in order to get them to our current subjugation and alignment. That being said, whoever's playing risk at the world is huge. It's not ignored, and maybe this is a reaction to the U.S.'s representatives when faced with international monies and pressures and nepotisms, buyouts, illegal deals, all sorts of all the bullshit that's going on, not only in Biden's campaign, but Trump does business all around the world. Who's he at the behest of? Biden. We're imagining that his son and his history and his past already has him dealing so heavily and steeped in other people's shit and assholes that there's no getting out. The Congresses access the companies that they're benefiting with their money. Lobbyists can pay for their vote prior to that. And there's no checks and balances. Of course, my campaign was to outlaw lobbying and outlaw profiteering in any manner while one is holding an office as a representative of any constituency across our land. And that should be imparted within the Convention of States. That being said, though, what are the odds that my mere saying so, my earnestness, the trouble with being earnest, it's not enough, right? I have to trend, I have to sell, I have to speak, I have to keep saying it, I have to keep reiterating it. And then I also get into the philosophical nuances of arguing, maybe more anti-Socratically than anyone I know. Instead of asking questions, just make statements implying the gap, the variant gap, such that the gap between being a Protestant Christian and activating the Convention of States is something I personally believe is just bullshit. Oh, hey, Ron Johnson. You can say it if you want, whatever it is you got to say. I had True Speller talking about Christ, but Utah after party. Still working on it. Ron, come on, type something in for the crowd again while I'm using the John. And I'll see if these guys are still on. I'm guessing they turned it off, though. I'll be back shortly, and maybe I'll keep painting. I'm pretty certain that the undergirding is a pushback against the modern cultural agenda to, like in this particular piece, I have a blonde man and a blonde woman, and he was a brunette earlier, but I had done a piece like that, and I thought, we'll make her hair red, he can be blonde, get the basics down, but then I don't know, right? And there was something about this idea of it almost being a faux pas to do combinations of a blonde man and a blonde woman, in that it's running roughshod against the plurality and the culture of negating the idea of white recessive genes being together, even though I'm a brown eye with brown hair that somehow is this way and then I still have this particular thing. And so there is a culture, though, that is so anti-patriarchy, or all the cultural elements. I understand why the Convention of States is trying to not kind of get back on our footing, and not to eradicate dark hair, dark skin coupling, and not to disparage interracial reproduction or whatnot, or gay or lesbian reproduction or whatnot, as far as I'm concerned. Meaning those appear to be choices based on your salient, cherry picking from your salient landscape, if you will, and your general preferences and how the cards unfold. That being said, there is also this idea in culture in terms of, I guess they were saying, well, meaning what I'm saying is Christendom is being used as a weapon against the modern critical race theory and or gender pronoun and the privilege self-declaration kind of motif in which the culture is moving, whether or not the U.S. is disjunct from the rest of the world or the majority of the rest of the world, and they're picking this up or wanting to get into the weeds about it. There is still something like the letter of the law and the spirit of the law in the U.S. But the spirit of the law is only used if there's an interpretation or a judgment issue based on what's considered an ambiguous intent found within the law. So in any case, the whole idea isn't to disparage that movement, and it's not to use Protestant Christendom, the ground to singular truth based necessarily in abiding by the religion, because that obviously runs contra to our separation of church and state, which I find ironic that these guys are attempting to peg things at the Christian Protestant level. And therefore, it would be nice to take over or reactivate or populate the laws that I believe these 38 first states need to hear in order to save, quote unquote, the republic from the dark money that controls the elections, the Federal Reserve, the international banking cartels, the international contracts, the military-industrial contrast, our dependency on oil, even though we're knocking that back, and big tech, social media, whether or not our divisions of intelligence, FBI, CIA, Homeland Security, and there's certainly other intelligence subdivision agencies, and all of the divisions, all of the departments that make up the administrative state of the federal government need. Those are, in my mind, overextended, and like the IRS is a new overextension of expenditure and hire to control and extract greater funds from more of the population while we're busy keeping the floodgates open to repatriate, quote unquote, patriate our population with migrants and non-citizens and possibly people that actually know our government better than we do, but I don't speak Spanish, so I'm not certain I could say that. Although we do have a huge influx of Arabs, Nigerians, and Ukrainians, and all sorts. I mean, we're the melting pot, but it doesn't mean I don't believe in wall restrictions and putting up barriers and maintaining what we would consider a law to gain citizenship or certain things, even though I do like appeals to streamline such things. I don't want to grant it carte blanche. Okay, anyway, the pillar, the background, the spine of what I'm saying, I believe I've already said. And so the gapping between this, although it has a cultural polarized singulitude towards Christ and not towards all of what philosophy and these put forth notions and descriptions of our government are actually attempting to remedy as possible moves for to close the poor wealth versus great wealth and health and general overall happiness that is considered primary, from which these arguments about the disparities stem. And this can come right down to socialism versus capitalism, or distribution of wealth versus the manufacturing sector, in the face of quote unquote AI, which still requires our attention to the screen. When one puts the screen down and walks outside, they may see a light blight of things that are disparaging to how it is they had previously held the ideology of the U.S. Put together. They may, meaning the internet will always make avail to you a kaleidoscope of horror porn, down porn, if you will, meaning not porn per se, but negative stories. If it bleeds, it leads, and the world has enough death and fighting that TikTok can scramble the use of brain into dystopic ways that are disjunct to their actual relationship to the actual world. God bless our souls. I pray, I do a global prayer often. Of course, what goes through my mind doesn't come close to accounting for an identification of every mind or situation that could use something like a prayer. And I'm not even saying my mind's notion has affluence or influence or divine connection. As a matter of fact, I mostly think not. Once again, I'm not a textual theist. I'm somebody that's registered a direct connect multiple times with that which I would say is beyond the persistent normative, hence of the Matrix philosophy. What if God was a woman? We would be in that womb. Seems to me that gaps are not smart enough to do what you want. So we're stuck with demos. Yes. Thanks, Ron. Yeah, that's almost why there is some level of the meritocratic. Like if I can boil it down and articulate it and then order it and then show everyone the recipe and stick it in the damn oven and keep the Protestants' hands out of this area while the process gets cooked, that would sure be great. And the variation of human freedom is what is at hand. Now, I personally believe we're already bought and sold on the highest margin, and to me, this is a pulling out of the STOP, the Convention of States. All it does, though, at max, even with 34 states, 38 states, is to put the amendment on the floor. It is not to force the signature of the amendment. It is just to say, we just need these guys to show the will of the people or of these grouping of states, the will of these states, and put it before the people that are supposedly representative of the constituency that is putting it forth in majority. And if they don't sign it, then obviously they're ousted. Meaning, if their constituency has gone so far as to put it forth via their legislatures, via the provisions in Article 5, and the senators or the representatives do not align with the will of their constituency, that should become known to the constituency so that they can vote them out. Part of the problem with this fractionalized, YouTube 17-second recordings, Instagram 17 seconds record, TikTok, or Instagram minute record, TikTok 3-minute record. These fractionalized bits of reiterated variance in close visual, like you're sympathizing with another person's closeness to this thing that they thought was of interest enough to put online, and you're fragmenting your time such as to be ripped away from context. I imagine that this, along with, propagating, you deprivate the population, so you get more drug runners, then you get more drug users, and so you get possibly a dumber down or possibly a smarter generation due to it, but mostly somebody that is also a dumbed down, intoxicated responder to this fractionalized interaction with social media. There's no patience, there's no gapping, there's no meditation minus like long meditations, minus one's phone, minus the technology, minus the input. If one can find themselves in the sickness of the fractionalized universe and back themselves out of this kaleidoscope long enough, that they can reorient themselves, and if that orientation grounds in something Christian, textual, historic, contextual, so be it. The whole point is to ground someone in a longer dilation of time than these fragmented subsets that are in broken chapterettes of 30 seconds, watch my next 30 seconds, and then the third 30 seconds to get the ending, and people are caught up on these weird sub rabbit holes that might be great as far as seeing what other people found interesting enough to film, but it might be at the peril of being able to focus on something that needs a lot more dilation, like your general education in sciences and maths, the general curriculum, and all of that's in the face of saying, hey, the AI will figure it out. Google's smarter than me. I can just remain dumb. You guys used to remember telephone numbers. Now you don't. We just push their name. Ba-dum, boom. Why learn anything? Won't the AI take care of it? We're still humans moving in human slop, and there's a lot of people that are getting more benefits to all the pump and dumps and all the lobbying and all the buyout. And to me, Convention of States is it's a last appeal, and so I'd hope that the separation between church and state would just simply stop that bit of business. And no, Ron Johnson is not just, when I say Republican, I mean that which formulates the laws of a republic, whatever the triad is, right? That's whatever the abuses are, let's say, like just because Bill Cosby later in life was a chemical rapist doesn't mean I don't like Fat Albert. You know what I mean?